Imagine a humble seed that has fed empires, stabilized soils, and delivered life-saving nutrition during history's darkest famines. A plant that packs more protein than many leafy greens, produces its own fertilizer, and can be milled into a gluten-free flour. This plant isn't exotic or endangered. It's sitting on your pantry shelf right now. Yet, in many modern suburbs, if you tried to grow it in your front yard, a homeowners association could fine you for ruining the neighborhood aesthetic. How did a food so indispensable become relegated to canned hummus and packaged snacks? And what does that say about our food systems? The plant is the chickpea, dependent Cicer arietinum tickers, also known as the garbanzo bean. A member of the legume family, it grows low to the ground on bushy plants bearing small pods each containing a few peas. There are two major types, desi and kabuli. Desi chickpeas are small, dark-seeded, and often used in Indian and African cuisine. Kabuli chickpeas are the larger pale beans familiar from hummus. Both types trace their ancestry to the Fertile Crescent, a region of the Near East that gave rise to some of humanity's earliest crops and civilizations. Genetic and archaeological evidence suggests chickpeas were domesticated around 10,000 years ago in what is now southeastern Turkey. Archaeological remains place them in Bronze Age settlements across the Mediterranean. Charred chickpeas have been found in Neolithic villages in France dating back to 6,790 BCE. Why were chickpeas so valued? Partly because they're nutrient-dense. In dry seeds, carbohydrates and protein together make up about 80% of the mass. Chickpeas deliver 17 to 22% protein, representing all 18 amino acids, and 18 to 22 grain of dietary fiber per 100 grain of seed. They are also rich in vitamins A, B, C, and E, and minerals such as iron, magnesium, potassium, and calcium. The high fiber and resistant starch slow digestion, reducing blood sugar spikes, which is why nutritionists today note chickpeas' low glycemic index and their ability to aid glycemic control. But chickpeas are more than just a protein source. As legumes, they form symbiotic relationships with rhizobium bacteria that fix atmospheric nitrogen. This process creates fertilizer from thin air. Agronomy guides emphasize that a well-inoculated chickpea crop can obtain most of its nitrogen from fixation and often requires little to no synthetic fertilizer. In other words, plant chickpeas and you can fertilize your soil for free. Throughout history, chickpeas have been a famine staple. During periods of scarcity in the ancient Mediterranean, people relied on legumes such as chickpeas because they could grow on marginal land, tolerate drought better than many cereals, and store easily for long periods. Ancient Greek and Roman writings describe chickpeas used in porridge, stews, and roasted snacks. In India, where chickpeas remain central to the diet, they have been ground into flour for breads like besan roti and thickened into sauces. North African cuisines turned chickpeas into couscous and soups. When grain crops failed, chickpeas offered reliable nutrition. Their seeds can be dried for years and rehydrated when needed. They provide energy, complete protein, and micronutrients in a form that doesn't require refrigeration. Historians have documented chickpea remains in storage pits used to survive droughts and sieges. Their dual role, feeding people and enriching the soil, made them invaluable. A home garden planted with chickpeas could mean the difference between survival and starvation. Scientific studies in the last decade have begun to validate folk wisdom about chickpeas' medicinal properties. Research shows that chickpea consumption improves blood glucose control because the resistant starch slows digestion and the amylose content prevents rapid spikes in blood sugar. Other experiments have found that peptides extracted from chickpeas can reduce the activity of alpha amylase, an enzyme involved in starch digestion. This is the same enzyme targeted by some diabetes drugs, though more research is needed. Animal models suggest that chickpea hydrolysates reduce blood lipid levels and improve HDL cholesterol. Reviews of dietary patterns find that diets rich in legumes are associated with improved cardiovascular health, better glycemic control, and weight management. These findings don't imply chickpeas are a miracle cure. They underscore that traditional foods often contain bioactive compounds that modern diets overlook. When scientists examine the humble chickpea, they find it influences metabolism in ways similar to pharmaceutical interventions, slowing carbohydrate digestion, modulating lipids, and providing satiety that helps with weight management. Chickpeas are not just good for people, they're good for the planet. Growing them can reduce dependence on synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Legumes naturally fix nitrogen, and chickpeas are particularly efficient. Agronomy guides note that a properly inoculated chickpea crop often derives the majority of its nitrogen from fixation and does not require nitrogen fertilizer. The consequence? Planting chickpeas enriches soil instead of depleting it. After harvesting chickpeas, farmers can plant cereal crops without adding as much synthetic fertilizer. Compare this with modern monoculture lawns. Turf grasses offer no edible yield and demand constant inputs: water, fertilizer, herbicides. In many suburban developments, homeowners are contractually obliged to maintain a manicured lawn. Chickpeas, by contrast, could provide food, fertility, and water savings. They require less irrigation than many vegetables. Yet try planting them in your front yard, and you may find yourself in violation of your community's rules. Given the nutritional, ecological, and historical evidence, you might expect chickpeas to be everywhere. Yet in much of the Western world, pulses occupy a tiny fraction of the dinner plate. Survey data show that pulse consumption is low. Non-Hispanic whites eat the least, Mexican Americans the most, and consumption has declined since the late 1990s. Chickpeas, in particular, are consumed minimally. High-income groups consume a bit more lentils and chickpeas, but overall intake remains negligible. The situation isn't better in Europe. In the 1960s, grain legumes used for human consumption accounted for more than half of cultivated area. But by the early 2010s, that share had plummeted. Legumes now occupy just a small percentage of cropland. This decline wasn't caused by a sudden aversion to chickpeas. It resulted from economic and policy factors. Cheap imports of soy and other high-protein feeds allowed livestock production to expand. As meat and dairy became dietary staples, plant proteins lost economic competitiveness. Governments subsidized cereals like wheat and maize, but offered little support for pulses. When protein needs are met by animal products, there is less incentive to grow legumes. Another factor is cultural preference. In many European and North American households, a meal isn't considered complete without meat. Legumes are often perceived as poor people's food. They require soaking and longer cooking times, clashing with convenience culture. The marketing budgets of meat and dairy industries dwarf those of pulse advocates. Over decades, advertising has shaped palates toward burgers and steaks, not stews of chickpeas. Is there a deliberate conspiracy to suppress chickpeas? It's tempting to imagine a villainous fertilizer company waging war on pulses the way lawn care companies demonized white clover. But the reality is more nuanced. Unlike clover, chickpeas were never marketed as a weed. Instead, they were quietly sidelined by structural forces, trade policies, subsidies, consumer tastes, and supply chains oriented toward animal proteins. Fertilizer manufacturers certainly benefit when farmers buy nitrogen rather than grow legumes, but there is no evidence of a coordinated campaign against chickpeas. Recognizing this complexity is crucial. Blaming a single actor oversimplifies the problem and distracts from systemic solutions. You might think growing chickpeas at home is a simple way to reclaim this lost staple. Plant a row near the sidewalk, harvest your own protein, and improve your soil. But many suburban residents face an unexpected obstacle: homeowners associations, HOAs. These private governing bodies set rules for communities, and their covenants often prioritize uniform appearance over ecological or nutritional value. Articles on HOA governance note that some associations explicitly ban vegetable gardens or regulate the size and placement of plants. Boards may allow flowers, but restrict trees, raised beds, or edible landscaping. In some communities, the yard must be maintained as a uniform lawn, and large gardens in front yards are discouraged. Why? HOAs argue that manicured lawns preserve property values by creating a cohesive look. A row of chickpea bushes might be seen as messy or agricultural, out of step with the suburban ideal of a trimmed green carpet. But these restrictions effectively criminalize self-sufficiency. You can plant ornamental grasses that provide no food, but you may be fined for planting a crop that nourishes you and enriches the soil. The same pattern we saw with clover, where cultural definitions of beauty served commercial interests, appears here too. When lawns are the norm, lawn care services, fertilizer companies, and landscapers profit. Edible landscapes threaten that revenue stream. To be fair, HOAs are not monolithic villains. Some associations respond to residents' requests and adapt rules to allow native plants or vegetable gardens in backyards. Right-to-garden legislation has emerged in some U.S. states, limiting the power of HOAs to ban edible gardens. Still, the prevalence of covenants prioritizing uniform lawns over ecological diversity shows how social norms can conflict with food security and environmental stewardship. The decline of chickpeas reveals a broader pattern. When markets and cultural norms favor certain crops, other valuable species are marginalized. Instead of thinking of chickpeas as an ethnic food or a niche health fad, we can view them as part of a diverse, resilient food system that benefits people and planet. Here are some facts to consider. 1. Nutrition and satiety. Chickpeas' combination of protein and fiber promotes fullness and stabilizes blood sugar. Because they contain resistant starch and slowly digestible carbohydrates, they have a low glycemic index and can help prevent blood sugar spikes. Diets rich in legumes are associated with better weight management and lower risk of type 2 diabetes. 2. Environmental benefits. Chickpeas fix nitrogen, reducing the need for synthetic fertilizers. Agronomy guides emphasize that a properly inoculated chickpea crop often requires little or no nitrogen fertilizer. 3. Cultural heritage. Chickpeas have been cultivated for millennia across the Middle East, Africa, South Asia, and the Mediterranean. They are central to dishes ranging from hummus to chana masala, reviving cultural memory when we cook with them. 4. Economic diversification. Growing chickpeas can diversify farm income and reduce dependence on volatile grain or meat markets. European policymakers now call for incentives to include more legumes in crop rotations. Yet, there are counterpoints: cooking time and convenience. Chickpeas require soaking and longer cooking times. Canned chickpeas mitigate this, but convenience culture still favors quick meals. Accepting chickpeas as a staple means investing time in food preparation, a barrier for busy households. Digestive comfort. Some people experience flatulence from legumes due to oligosaccharides. Preparation methods like soaking, sprouting, and pressure cooking reduce these effects, but not everyone knows or applies them. Market availability. While chickpeas are readily available in specialty sections, they are less prominent in mainstream supermarkets compared to meat, dairy, and wheat products. Changing this requires demand and supply to shift simultaneously. These challenges don't negate chickpeas' benefits. They highlight the need for realistic expectations. Chickpeas are not a panacea that will single-handedly solve hunger or climate change. They are one piece of a diversified agricultural portfolio. The white clover story is compelling because it identifies a clear profit motive. Herbicide producers needed to sell weed killer, so they rebranded a beneficial plant as unsightly. Could a similar motive exist with chickpeas? Legumes, by fixing nitrogen, reduce the demand for synthetic fertilizers. Fertilizer companies generate billions of dollars annually selling nitrogen produced from fossil fuels. In theory, widespread adoption of pulse crops could cut into those profits. But correlation is not causation. Unlike clover, chickpeas have long been valued as a crop. They were never included in lawn seed mixes, nor were they sold by fertilizer companies. Farmers have always known that growing pulses improve soil. The decline in chickpea production is more about opportunity cost. Farmers plant what pays best. Cereals and oil seeds supported by subsidies often outcompete pulses. Additionally, chickpeas are susceptible to diseases like ascochyta blight, which can devastate yields. Planting chickpeas involves agronomic risk that some farmers avoid. Fertilizer companies may not promote legumes, but there is little evidence of active suppression. When evaluating claims of conspiracies, we should ask, is there concrete evidence? Who benefits? Are there alternative explanations? The more plausible explanation is that structural incentives, policies, consumer preferences, global trade, drive the underutilization of chickpeas. Recognizing these systemic factors allows us to advocate for change, e.g., crop diversification incentives, culinary education, without resorting to unsubstantiated theories. If you decide to plant chickpeas despite potential HOA pushback, consider these practicalities. 1. Climate. Chickpeas prefer cool, dry conditions. They are drought tolerant, but sensitive to waterlogging. In humid regions, disease pressure increases. 2. Soil preparation. Chickpeas need well-drained soil and benefit from being planted after a cereal crop to reduce disease. Inoculate the seeds with the appropriate Rhizobium Cicero strain to ensure nitrogen fixation. 3. Spacing. Plants are usually spaced 6 to 8 inches apart. They produce pods around 120 days after sowing, depending on variety. 4. Harvest. Pods should be harvested when dry. Seeds can then be stored for months. Leaves and tender stems are not typically eaten, but the seeds can be roasted, boiled, or ground into flour. 5. Legal considerations. Check your HOA's covenants. If front yard vegetable gardens are prohibited, consider planting chickpeas in the backyard or in container beds. If your HOA allows ornamental plants but not vegetable gardens, you may be able to argue that chickpeas are ornamental shrubs with attractive foliage. Some states have enacted right-to-garden laws. Research local regulations before planting. The story of chickpeas is both inspiring and cautionary. It reminds us that humans have cultivated nutrient-dense, sustainable foods for thousands of years, yet modern systems can marginalize them in favor of short-term profits or aesthetic norms. It also warns against simplistic narratives. There is no single villain suppressing chickpeas. There is a web of economic, cultural, and regulatory factors. By understanding these forces, we can make informed choices. If we want resilient food systems, we must diversify our plates. Legumes like chickpeas can play a central role, providing protein, improving soils, and offering culinary variety. But adoption requires addressing barriers, shifting public perception, adjusting policies to support pulse crops, investing in research to breed disease-resistant varieties, and rethinking suburban norms that prioritize lawns over food. The next time you open a can of chickpeas, remember that you're holding an ingredient that sustained ancient civilizations, that modern science acknowledges for its health benefits, and that, if planted, could enrich the very soil you stand on. You might also consider whether your neighborhood rules allow you to grow your own. Will you accept the status quo where edible plants are hidden in the backyard and ornamental lawns dominate the front? Or will you join a growing movement that values food sovereignty, ecological health, and historical wisdom? Chickpeas may be small, but their story is a window into the choices that shape our landscapes and our lives.